Hello, fifth graders. We are studying Unit 3, Lesson 1. This is Mr. Bowlby's fifth grade class. So, let's go ahead and get started on our study of poetry. You should all have a poetry journal with your name on it so that I can check your work and your work alone. Also, your name in the Poets Journal. Yes, poetry belongs to you. So, let's talk about poetry. First of all, this lesson number 1, we're going to introduce poetry. We're going to talk about the building blocks of poetry. We're going to read a poem by Denis Levertov called To the Snake. And then we're going to talk about writing apostrophes, which is what this particular kind of poem is called. Not apostrophes like you use for punctuation. But apostrophes, when you're talking about poetry, is a specific kind of poem that is usually relating to someone or something that is not present. So, for example, she talks about the snake, and her poem is about a snake that's not there. So we'll get to that. So basically, we're going to identify the basic elements of poetic structure: title, lines, line breaks, stanzas, and read the poem To the Snake. Some good vocabulary to get a hold of first before we begin. Glinting, which means sparkling or shining. Pulsing, which is throbbing rhythmically like a heart beating, like boom, 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 boom. Wake, which is a trail of disturbed water or air left by the passage of a ship or aircraft. Something is in the wake of the ship, kind of that kind of thing. Anyway, there's also other vocabulary. All those things can be found in your poetry journal. So, let's open this up here. Okay. A second. All right, so vocabulary is in the book for you to take note of and study. A lot of you already know a little bit about poetry. Maybe you've had experience with poetry. Maybe you don't like poetry. Maybe you love poetry. Great. My job, my goal, my desire is for you to love poetry by the time we are done with this. So, have you read poetry before? I have. I've read a lot of poetry. I like poems. I've written poems. I like poetry. We're going to do a poetry file. We'll talk about that later, that we're going to be making for kind of the end assessment for this whole unit. Will be good. If you've heard of Emily Dickinson, famous poet, she said once that if I feel physically like the top of my head has been taken off, then I know it is poetry. It's one of those. But she you got to think about that question. What did you think she means by that? Okay. Now, you're going to listen to me read you the poem by poet Denis Levertov, and we're gonna talk about her a little bit. There is a little information at the end of each poem in your poetry journal. There is a biography of information about that particular poet. Denise is pretty cool. She was born in 1923 in the United Kingdom. She was born around poets. Her whole family was well, they were writers. They were writers. So she knew she was going to grow up to be a writer. Her mom even suggested that she send some of her poets to the famous T.S. Eliot, who was, so she did that. Which is, it's good to send your work in to people that are good at stuff. Something John Green once said is that, find somebody that does something you want to do, that's doing it better, and learn from them. That's what you do. Whenever you want to learn something or get to know something or become better at something, that's what you do. So you'll read the biography section there, kind of learn a little bit more about her. And now, the poem that we are going to read about today. Poetry is interesting because it's the different forms and different styles of poetry. There's poetry in music. We'll talk about that later. Just how different songs and lyrics are poetic. People use it all the time. And you don't even realize you're using it. Okay. To the Snake. Green snake. This is on page 3. Turn the page. Green snake, when I hung you round my neck and stroked your cold, pulsing throat, as you hissed to me, glinting, arrowy gold scales, and I felt the weight of you on my shoulders. The whispering silver of your dryness sounded close in my ears. Green snake, I swore to my companions that certainly you are harmless, but truly I had no certainty and no hope, only desiring to hold you for that joy which left. A long wake of pleasure as the leaves moved and you faded into the pattern of grass and shadows, and I returned, smiling and haunted to a dark morning. So, you'll see the breakdown of this particular poem. First of all, is in 2 stanzas. Now, a stanza, here's the word stanza, okay, and stanza break, is like a paragraph kind of thing. They call it stanzas, though, in poetry. So this right here, and then there's a break in between. You have that. There's 2 stanzas in this one because it's just one and then another. Gives you a nice break in between. Also, when you're reading poetry, you're reading it line by line. You're not going to be reading it like you read a regular paragraph or an essay or a story. It's different. The form is different. Because poets experiment with different forms of writing. They experiment with grammar. They experiment with style, with sound, with color, all those things that they put in their poems. So when you read it, you're reading it line by line. So you're saying, green snake, when I hung you round my neck and stroked your cold pulsing throat, as you hissed to me, glinting, arrowy gold scales I felt. So you're reading it like that, slowly through the whole thing. So, there's a fun little tidbit. Samuel Taylor Coleridge said that prose, poetry, prose is made up of words in their best order, normal, but poetry consists of the best words in their best order. I'll let you think about what that means. So you can read the poem again, silently to yourself. Basically, okay, so poetry, so there's special terms that we use when describing different parts of poetry. Like I already said, that they experiment with grammar, language, sound, meaning behind words, going back and forth, kind of word play. Those kinds of things are very normal for that. And poets often end their lines, like, I hung you around my neck. It's not the end of the sentence, right? It's just the end of the line, because she's emphasizing neck. The word at the end of the line is an emphasis, kind of, that she wants to bring attention to it. And then you break the line and go on to the next one. And you can check in your journal, again, your glossary, to look up terms that you still have questions about. This stanza break, like I mentioned, ends after the word ears. The silver of your dryness sounded close at my ears. The end of the first stanza break. So when we talk about poetry, we speak of shape, we speak of structure, appearance of writing. Those are all the form. The form of the poem is the shape, structure, and we'll show you different kinds of poems and when we're doing our poetry file that are in different forms. So we're going to, let's see, you'll open up your book to page 4 and answer the following questions about the poem. First of all, write down the poem's title. That's number 1. That's just To the Green Snake. So you write that down. And then number 2, who or what is being addressed in the poem's title? Green snake, right? And then how does the speaker describe the green snake? Now, I do not have a green Expo marker with me right now, a dry erase marker, so I just made a blue snake, which, because unless you're colorblind, that's like terribly obviously wrong. And that's not the best snake in the world. I'm sure you could probably do better. But that's okay. At any rate, they you go through there, try to describe, kind of how the snake looks from the poem, basically. And then number 4, 5, 6, and 7 are again more questions for you to answer. According to stanza 2, when did the speaker tell her companion she believes about the snake? Number 5, the speaker then tells the snake, but truly I had no certainty. What did the speaker really believe about the snake? So we answer those questions, 1 to 7, on there. Now, you're going to write your own apostrophe once you're done with that. You're going to write your own. On the next page is planning. Now you'll think about what you're going to write in your own poem. And I may have groups work on coming up with different ideas for different animals or things to talk about. This one says just get ideas for like animals when you see them. Example, like the monkey that always laughs at me at the zoo, or the dog that's always barking at me. What you would want to tell them. The poem about what you would want to tell that particular animal or person that's not there, that kind of thing. Be poetic. Be, experiment with your words with it. You can get that started, then you'll be able to start drafting your own poem. It'll ask you what animal you're writing about and where do you see it. Then number 2 gives you some more hints on what you can write about. Things you saw, smelled, heard when you experienced that animal. The more words you can play with, the more you can put into your poem. The more life you can give your particular poem when you're writing it. So you'll write, see it says then in number 4, what would you tell the animal if you were together? So then you'll draft your poem. You'll talk about what it's about. In line 1, write about when and how you experienced the animal. Describe what you were doing when you noticed the animal. On the second stanza, you write about what the animal did when it was around you and what you would want to say to the animal now. And on page 8, basically gives you where you're going to write all that. So you might want to practice on scratch paper before you write it in here. You can write in pencil so you can erase as well. That works too. But try to just do your best on that. And then look at the biography as well. There's core vocabulary on page 9. And you'll see that at the back of the journal, like way in the back, there's a glossary. There's also creative space back here, which is kind of cool. So if you want to jot down notes, there's several pages for creativity. But you'll see the glossary with the different words that you'll run into. And then you have several pages of places to just write. Not draw, write. Yes, you can illustrate poems. You definitely can. But my main goal here is to get you to write, not just draw. That takes care of Unit 3, Lesson 1. We talked, again, to wrap up, we talked about the introduction to poetry, how poetry works, how it comes in different forms, breaks up into stanzas, how it doesn't always end. It ends specifically on words that are trying to be emphasized. We talked about the building blocks there. We read the poem Denis Lavertov's To the Snake. And then we talked more about writing your own apostrophe. And I showed you examples of what to do in your writing journal. So get that taken care of, my friends. Thank you. Have a good day.